I'm Amber. Today I'm going to be telling you what I read in the last week of August. This, of course, is a weekly roundup. Past week I read 2 books, sort of, and I'm currently reading 2 books. And as you all know, I do read 2 books at a time. I read one from the library and one off my own TBR. So therefore, I'm getting the balance, whatever, it's the way I do things. But anyways, the first book that I read this week I do not have because I returned it to the library this week, and that was The Monstrologist by Rick Yancey, the first book in the trilogy. I don't know what it's called anymore, but this is about a 12-year-old boy who, I forget his name already, who is the assistant to a doctor who studies and hunts down monsters. After a grave robber shows up at their door, craziness ensues. Now, I DNF'd this book. I lost interest really quickly with it. I thought that the violence, the horror, the monster part of this was very lackluster, very simple. I held off at an arm's length to the reader, and although I felt like this was supposed to be YA, it felt more like middle grade. So maybe it is mostly middle grade, I don't know, but I thought it was YA when I'm picking it up. And I feel like that if it is YA and he's making it like that, it's like people don't understand teenagers. They can handle a bit more gruesome, and especially with this kind of story, I was expecting a little bit more out of the horror part of it. I also thought that the writing was way too simplistic. Again, that's one of my major issues with YA. They simplify the writing and expect that young adults, teenagers, aren't going to be able to handle a complex writing style, which really just pisses me off because they can. I was already reading adult novels when I was 14 years old. I think that says a lot about teenagers, and I know that there are plenty of people who have said the same thing. They were reading adult novels already by the time they were in high school. So, like, come on, raise the level of your writing. We don't need to be that looked down upon. So it kind of just frustrates me, and it really just put me off of this book. So I DNF'd it. It gets 2 stars. The book that I read from my TBR this week was Tuesdays with Morrie by Mitch Albom. This is about how Mitch Albom lost contact with one of his professors after college, and then he finds his way back to him after learning through a news report that his teacher has ALS. He gets back into contact with him, and they start having these weekly meetings together, discussing life and things that the teacher wants to get out before he dies. I didn't give this book a rating because I feel like it's not something that I feel right about giving a rating, especially since it has an important lesson, and I think that people will get something out of it. But for me, I felt like these were things I've already heard, and I also felt like it was less of a story, more of a sermon. And I get that he was trying to get something out, but the whole time I felt like I was back in church, listening to a guy pacing back and forth, saying how he got back to God. And as you may know, I'm not a religious person, and this is not exactly religious, it's more spiritual, and I appreciate the fact that he wasn't shoving down religion down our throats or anything. I do feel like Mitch Albom is a Christian, but I did appreciate that he didn't have an agenda in that sense. But at the same time, I really didn't want to that feeling at all, so it was kind of a mix because I get that he was talking from the heart to this book, and I felt that, but it was one of those things where I've heard a lot of this stuff already, so I felt like it was just being repeated to me. So like I said, I didn't give it a rating. On to the 2 books that I am reading this week. So for my library book, I'm reading Waterfall Elephants by Sarah Green. I am 100 pages in. So far, I feel like the writing isn't as grand, as spectacular as I was expecting it, considering the story. I feel like it's a little bit too simple, too straightforward for me right now. I also feel like there's just not a lot of descriptives to keep me going. I love beautiful descriptives. I don't particularly like straightforward, logical, analytical type writing. This isn't analytical, but at the same time, it's not really descriptive. And I feel like that's kind of needed for this kind of story. I just it's not giving me what I was expecting out of it or hoping for, but I am enjoying the story. So that's what's keeping me going, that the story itself is very interesting. And I do like Jacob Jakubowski, although I feel like he's not. The book that I'm reading from my TBR is Cat's Eye by Margaret Atwood. I am so far loving her writing, the way that she is creating each of her characters, which are so well rounded, and just creating the world that she is living. I absolutely am just enthralled by her writing. I'm also really intrigued by the story. At first, I was kind of hesitant about the story, not really sure where it was going, but I see it and I see where she's going with it, and I'm absolutely in love. I will be up to 200 pages today, and I should be done with this at least by Monday. That's all that I have read. Tell me down below what you've read this week, and if you've read any of the books that I mentioned today, tell me down below if you agree or disagree on anything that I said. Thank you all for watching, and keep smiling.